Tō katoa. Welcome everybody. Ko Derek Wenmoth toku inga. My name is Derek Wenmoth and I'm the founder of futuremakers.nz. I'm also the co-author of a book called Agency by Design and Educator's Playbook. And it's about that book that I want to share some stories from two educators from the Westminster Schools District in Colorado today. These schools have been involved in implementing a competency-based education program for a number of years now and making some great steps forward in the exciting programs they offer students. But when they came across our book, Agency by Design, it opened up yet another dimension for what they can do with their students in transferring the ownership of learning and making their approach to competency-based learning less about being teacher-directed and more about being truly learner-directed. Let's hear what they have to say.
So our story in Westminster Public Schools, we have been implementing competency-based education for years. I think our pilot year must have been 16, 17 years ago. And our superintendent is, really great about keeping up and collaborating with other people and brought, this amazing book that you wrote, that you were part of that, to a committee of her top leaders and our teacher in our building who represents our leadership committee, and shared it with them and talked about, agency is something we've kind of always missed, right? Like we've tried several different directions. We've tried proficiency scales. We've tried all kinds of things. But really not been able to hit at the heart of agency at multiple developmental levels and how powerful that can be. And so she brought that, and my teacher was so excited when she came back from the meeting because she felt like it really tapped into the essence of what we've been missing around agency and how it gave such a nice, intentional, deliberate platform that teachers could immediately implement, immediately work off of. And it really hit home and struck home with the conversations she'd been having with her colleagues at lunches, during collaboration time, like their big next step. And it really like bundled it for them. And so she was really excited. She came back, wanted to immediately speak with me, opened it up, shared it with me, started pointing out very specific things that could easily be implemented, and asked if they could immediately pilot it.
So we immediately got the book with the binder and started going through it. And the way that the book is laid out, it was not overwhelming. And it was easy to use. It made me feel like, yes, this is it. This is our next step. This is what we need to be doing. So that was just, I remember that day at lunch, and I remember how excited we were, and then how excited we were when we got the book and started to take a deep dive into it. I think the thing that for me really hit home was the responsibility to help our learners, motivate them to have responsibility for their own learning and themselves, for others, and for their community or the world. And it just was in such conjunction with our work that we were doing with Dr. Marzano. And I was like, this is all coming together. And I love that, how it all comes together. So the students, the more agency that we were able to give them opportunities, they just ran with it. It was a very natural process. My specific story is we have win time. So what do I need? It's an individual hour where students are working. They're either pulled out to work with resources. I'm working with small groups. And so the students have this win time. And we decided early on, the beginning of the year, that we would have a tracker. We did it the year before, that they would track their work. But we designed those trackers. The teachers, the learning facilitators had designed those trackers. And after looking at the book, we were like, we shouldn't design these. The students should design them. So Dylan and I went into our learning environments and said, I'm going to give you guys some time to design your own tracker. And what they came up with was beautiful. It was personalized. It let the students talk to each other about how they best learn. And I really got to sit back and watch them discover, oh, I'm a list maker. I need to have a list on mine. Some of the students like to get all of their work done the beginning of the week. and then have extra time to work on passion projects. Some of them like to plan out their week. Oh, I'm going to do these 2 lessons a day. They were able to talk with each other and say, well, this is going to work for me. I'm going to design my weekly tracker around this. And then also show care for others in their class. Well, that might not be how you best learn. So you might have yours differently, and respect that they weren't going to do it the same way. And that was a living document that we let them adapt throughout the year, according to what their needs were and what their goals were. And the goals just took off. It wasn't an environment of competitiveness. It was you learn at your own pace, and I'm so happy for you that you're meeting your goals. So that was my big aha, is why am I designing this weekly tracker for them? They should do it themselves, and they ran with it.
Teaching them to really understand, like, we as adults are always constantly monitoring their data, right? This is your data. Now you're going to go track it somewhere. Maybe you'll look at it the next time you take another assessment, but it still was for us. And I think this book allows us to take it to the next level, where we're teaching them a skill about regulating your own success along the way, and being able to acknowledge where you're not successful, and not seeing that as this shameful place, but really seeing it as a place of re-engagement, right? So when you fail, you could look at that as a deficit model, and oh my gosh, now you're this color that you're labeled on an assessment. There's no coming back until you take the assessment again. So you're just in waiting until you get next validation from your teacher to tell you next step. I think that fits in the traditional model, but with competency based, you're always looking at an innovative way of getting them to really see themselves and all of those things that they bring to the table as assets. And I think this is a platform for allowing them to re-engage when they hit that fail forward and say, I'm going to re-engage. Like, this is just a piece of the process. I know where I'm at in the process, so I can re-engage in the process. And I don't need to wait for that validation on the assessment. I can monitor this specific skill. I can monitor 5 skills at a time. I can set a goal. I can reactivate that goal. I can extend my timeline. And that can be applied to passion projects. It can be applied to their, we're an art school. And so that can be applied to how well they do, with their learning a new instrument, memorizing their lines for a role. It can be applied to so many other things. And I think advocating for class changes to your principal. I mean, I get lots of those, advocating for extra recess time because you feel that it validates your mental health and that attributes to better test scores. These are the types of emails that I was getting. And I'm like, who are these children? Like, they're like, you want test scores and we need mental health. So I really think we can find a common ground. And I'm like, who are you talking to me like this? This is crazy. But how do you say no to that, right? When we teach these skills to these learners at such a young age, and they're able to feel validated and confident in themselves and then approach you in that manner at such a young age, I can only begin to imagine what their workforce life, what our workforce will be like later when they're able to do that with their bosses. I just, how amazing is that to be collaborators of learning, not only in school, but to think about what will this look like later for them.
One of the biggest changes that I saw was truancy. And students coming to school, because it wasn't me telling them why it was important. It wasn't about me, the teacher. It was us partnering together. We're on this learning journey together. We're partners. And I think it's old school that the teacher is here and students are here. But this agency by design brings us more on a level playing field. In the book where it says conditions created by teachers, that is a game changer, because I was able to reflect on what I was doing, say, am I doing everything I can do to motivate and empower these students to be engaged themselves, not coming from me, but coming from themselves. And so they wanted to come to school because they had things they wanted to do, and they were excited about it, and they were accepting of themselves, where they're at on their learning journey and their own plan or path, and then creating that plan. So I think just the excitement that it brings, it just changes the culture. And when you think of the ideal learning environment, That's what it is. And when you have those moments and you get to sit back and see those magical moments happen, that's more of what we need. So the data wasn't just for me. The students wanted to know. They were asking, they're taking the lead. So it's not me pushing that, it's them taking the lead. And that's what I really noticed in our school is students feeling comfortable asking, knowing the why. Like if I say, oh, this is our learning target for the week, and now they actually knew why that was important or what they needed to do beforehand to get there. And then if they met that learning target, what could they do next? And starting to learn their why and the why behind everything that we learn and make those real life relevant connections. I feel that at the basis of any relationship is trust. That's the bottom of the pyramid is trust. And if you don't have trust, you can't get to those next levels. So you have to start breaking down those barriers from the beginning of the year, that this is not about, it's not what I say goes. We're doing this together. We're creating our code of conduct, our code of cooperation. How does this learning environment work for each of you? And giving them a chance to have a say in that. And then slowly building that trust in them earning trust to make these decisions and think about how they learn best and be okay with it. So if we can start to build that confidence and build that confidence internally from them. And you can see that if you had a camera, if we put a camera in our classrooms from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, I think you would see the shoulders when they come in and the shoulders are down, and slowly how those shoulders are starting to come up because they're learning it's okay to make mistakes. That is what learning is. And knowing what your mistakes are and how to grow from them and to celebrate that. And I think as a district, as a district and a site, we do a really good job on celebrating mistakes because we say this is the way that you're going to learn. So having that growth mindset, not only for the students, but for me too. And that's why, like I said, I really love the book because I was able to look and say, okay, I'm not there yet, but that's okay. I'm not going to beat myself up about it. This is how I'm going to get there. What are the steps I'm going to take to get there? And you can model that as a teacher, but until the students really feel that they can trust themselves and they can trust me, that they're seen and heard and accepted for where they're at, that's not going to happen. So we really need to build on that.
If we are wanting to do this with our kids and we're establishing that trust and we are working through our system to be able to make this kind of the living, breathing way that we do things, how do then I model that with my team? And so rather than me going into meetings with kind of a set agenda of where I want that to end, how do I truly go in open to what ideas are they bringing to the table? And does it all have to look the same? Because I feel like as leaders, we're always like, this team's going to work on this, or we're going to do this school wide. But when you really start looking at how do you shape, support, rebuild, encourage all teachers, they need that same personalized learning plan, right? And so if you take that mindset of what comes out of agency by design and you apply that as a leader to your staff, you're then modeling it, and they then go into the classroom with that freedom of, I can now do that with my kids because I'm being given that same respect, support, etc. And so I need to now take that forward. And I was very honest with my staff to say that is not an easy thing for me. I'm a control freak. Like I like everything a certain way. You may not always know the why. You got to just get on board and trust me. And so that was a big shift for me. And so this was a good opportunity for me to be reflective and say, hey, this is a struggle for me and something I know I'm challenged with. But if I'm expecting the teachers to implement it and I'm expecting the kids to buy into it and I'm seeing success with it, how then do I impact the building at a larger level by doing the exact same thing with my staff?
Because I never thought about it, but that's exactly what you did with us. Like I feel so that you trust me, you trust what I'm going to do, and you're going to back me no matter what. Like I know you're in my corner, and I feel that that's what happened with at least my learning environment and my students. They trusted me, I trusted them, and they knew I had their back no matter what. And you just appreciate us, you love us and let us grow no matter where we're at, because we're all in a different place in our education and being teachers, educators. You trusted us, you gave us that agency, and I always knew that you were in my corner and had my back no matter what. So thank you. Yeah, that is very true. That did happen.
You go in and make it look easy, but behind you're like, oh, can I trust him with this? Oh, is this too much? It's that kind of balance. And I think that ties back into your initial question of like, you're not just this person who hands over learning. Instead, you become this facilitator of engaging in life, engaging in learning, and engaging in the relevancy of how that connects to the student next to them, right? If I learn this way, does this impact that learner in another way? What does it mean to be a learner in a shared space, in an alone space? What resources can I advocate for in this space so I can get my needs met?
Right. Agency is not about giving up control, because I am a control freak. Like I'm type A teacher, very much so. But that's where the book comes in to play, because then you can kind of gauge yourself like, all right, it doesn't mean that you don't have a plan. You are still thinking through everything, but it gives you kind of the steps to say, all right, we're going to try this. I'm going to give them a little bit and see how they do, and then give them more. And it just starts this amazing culture of agency in your learning environment. But it is not about not having a pace, not having a plan. That it is about having a plan, but having a better plan.
This agency part, I think, is the most important part to get right, because that will impact your test scores. We got our test scores back, and there was some big gains there. And I'm a firm believer that the skill set has always been there, but getting the engagement, getting the care and the concern, getting them to want to show up for themselves, to see the relevance of that. I think that's key, right? Like, yeah, they can show up and take the test and mark the dot for us and get excited if we tell them good job, but what does it mean to them? How do they feel walking away from that, especially if it's a big buildup? And so unfortunately, we still have to live in the state assessment system, which is grade level based, which doesn't match competency based. But at that point, it shouldn't matter, because it's really about, I know who I am as a learner. I know how to advocate for myself. I'm going to do my absolute best on this. I'm showing up today. And I think getting them to show up every day is really what matters. And I think not seeing the gloom and doom, getting past it, like getting them to feel some control over themselves, their lives, their future. That's what competencies are based about. And I don't think you can do that without agency at the center. You just can't. They won't ever have it at a job. They won't ever have it when they're, looking at colleges they want to pursue. They'll have indecisiveness. They'll question their own decisions in life. I think this is the foundation for getting them to engage in society in a healthy way.
The conditions created by teachers. That just gives me a very visual example of, this is what this should look like. This is what motivation and engagement should look like. This is what my learning environment should look like. It's broken down into very relatable categories. And I would just pick a category and mark where I'm at, like, this is where I think I'm at and why. And then, all right, I'm going to pick one thing out of here and I'm going to work on that. So that's my favorite part of the book, is the conditions created by teachers, because that's what I'm doing and what I want to look at. So that, and then of course in the beginning of the book, just how it keeps circling back to responsibility to self, responsibility to others, and responsibility to your community. And community could be your classroom, your school, your town, your city, or the world.
And this is my favorite part of our school, just so you know. We only implemented it a couple of years ago. But you take your traditional student of the month. We've expanded that now to be student of the month, like hybrid, where we have these set criteria and students nominate other students and then students present to other students. So what I saw specifically come out of Kelley's classroom that was really cool is not, sometimes you have kids go up there and kind of fumble with the mic, and this is my friend John, he did a really good job and that's why everyone loves him, and here you go. they're now writing like paragraphs about their colleague. And Kelley would have 3 students come. They'd come with like artifacts, like here's a poster we've made for you, or here's a book of all of the adjectives we think describe you. Here's what being responsible means in our classroom, in our culture, and here's how you've met that criteria. And this is how they're articulating that, not only for their own parents as speakers, but to the student and to the student's parents. And so we've evolved this over time. And so I'd like to see what is the next step in how that looks when we have all classrooms working from this model and this book. How will that change that, right? What will those speeches look like from little ones to the older ones? They're good. They've been getting better every single year. But wow, how powerful is that when your student of the month turns from this very exclusive group that comes to be recognized only in front of their parents to perhaps more now of a school assembly where kids are talking positively and promoting a learning culture in their own words with this relevancy behind it that comes from agency, not only for the speaker, but also for the receiver. And then in addition to that, we have a parent ceremony. So I'd really like to see handing over the mic, handing over opportunities for them to be able to do this recognition of self and others publicly. But if we don't find the time for that and make the time for that, if we don't make the time for that and intentionally make the time for that, we're not giving them the platform to apply any of those skills outside of that classroom. And I'd like to see this more school-wide.
Last year, the year before, I'll get so nervous on those Mondays because I'm going to get up and speak, and I was so nervous about it. And then this year, we implemented this, and the learners just took over. All I had to do was print what they were going to say. They handled it. They were even like, can we speak in Spanish too? I'm like, yes, please. Because they're like, oh, we know his mom only speaks Spanish, so are you okay? And one student would do it in Spanish, one would do it in English. I mean, they handled it, and it was a win-win for me. Right? They did the design, they decided what they wanted to make, they voted, it wasn't a popularity contest. They really thought about the rubric and what each month who they wanted to represent for that month, and they ran with it. It was amazing. And then not only did it take a little something off my plate, but it was a bucket filler for me to get to stand up there and watch them do this. I mean, Mondays, I was like, it went from a day that I would feel nervous about to that once a month, a day that it was just such a bucket filler. It just lifted my spirit.
Well, it's super empowering when you hear things like, I mean, there's only so many times that, like, especially if your kid is a repeat kid of getting student of the month, right? And the teacher goes up and says, oh, always a good learner, always responsible, starts on time, has great attendance, like kind of goes through the whole thing. But to hear other students say, when I struggle with math, my friend always is willing to help me, always willing to sit beside me and work through it. When I feel bad and I don't have someone to eat lunch with, my friend here always makes sure I'm not sitting alone, or I'm like, to hear those things, watching our parents respond to that. Yes, all those other things matter. And our teachers say that kind of before they hand the mic off. But then to hear the impact of your child on other children in a learning environment, and not just get the call from the principal, like they're doing great or they're not doing great, but to really hear the impact from other kids, I think is so empowering from our parents' standpoint, because we know that they don't, A, we're competency based, which is new, and B, parents don't have a guidebook. So to know my kid's doing an okay thing and is kind to others and cares about the environment and knows how important school is in their future, I think that's all our parents really want from us. Like, is our kid, is my child doing okay? Did I raise them okay? Are they nice to other kids? Do they have friends? Are they safe at school? And are they going to be okay? Are they going to be able to pursue their dreams, whatever those are? That's really the 4 questions that they want answered. And I think, giving the opportunity to hear that from other kids is pretty impactful.
Don't wait. Get a copy of the book, give it to your educators when they return to school. Yeah. And get your students involved. I will offer up any of my learners to get on a Zoom and talk about any of this and how it changed their year and how it made them feel, because it's these personal connections and the personal, stories from what the book has done that is there. It's going to make a difference, because who doesn't want their students being responsible to themselves, responsible to others, and responsible to their community? It helps just create this culture and gets rid of so many problems that we're fighting with, and we're fighting with the wrong tools. This is the tool that I think schools need to change their culture.
Start it as early in your competency-based journey as you can, because you'll wrestle with trying to create teacher-centered artifacts like trackers and all of those things, when really the mindset of agency drives competency-based. And if the sooner you can get that into the kids' high interest, high engagement, where they're creating those deliverables on their own, I think you're going to see the power increase, and you're going to get the understanding of the system for competency-based quicker, and the parents are going to get it quicker. Like, how could you expand this to almost be something we could hand to parents when they engage in a competency-based system? Like, what would agency look like and advocacy look like for a parent going through a competency-based system? And how can we then hand this off to, like, maybe parents that are interested in this type of learning model, and help them understand the importance of agency, and not to see that as challenging the system, right? Because so for some of our families, they may see that as like, you told your teacher you needed that way. That's not okay. You have to do what the teacher says. So breaking their design of how they saw their own traditional education and allowing them to see this as an asset and a benefit. I would just say to anybody listening to this, like, see how you can utilize this tool to not only be something that impacts the kids and your staff, but also impacts your families.
If you've been as inspired by listening to Claudette and Kelley as I was, you may choose to download your own free copy of the Agency by Design and Educator's Playbook from the Aurora Institute website. It's all free and available to you to go about making the same sorts of changes in your learning environment as Claudette and Kelley have done. If you would like further information, check out details on the Future Makers website.